I'm very delighted to be here today. As I was introduced as the head of the unit responsible for the health technology assessment regulation, I also want to say that I'm also responsible for health systems in the EU and looking at the state of health, which means looking at the policy and data available for policymakers around that. I say that because health technology assessment, I think, suffers a lot from its name. I think many people don't really understand what it is. So part of the reason that I'm very happy to meet with you today and to explain a little bit about what we're trying to do at EU level on health technology assessment is to really show that for us, the health technology assessment is very much part of the whole discussion around health systems, strengthening health systems resilience, really looking at how to improve the effectiveness, accessibility, and resilience of health systems. So maybe just to start with, health technology assessment is really about comparing different interventions. Don't go yet to that, please.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I wanted to explain a little bit because I think it's important that we all understand what we're talking about. The beauty, if you like, of what we're trying to do at EU level is that we're trying to really put a new system in place which will help all member states as well as stakeholders try to look at how we can best pool our resources together in order to see how we can assess different technologies. And the way we do it, and now you can turn to the next slide, is that at the EU level, we are just looking at the clinical assessment, okay? So as you understand, I'm sure many of you know that health systems as such is a competence of member states. So we have to have a very fine balance of where we can bring added value at EU level. I want to reiterate that for us, it's very, very important that every country knows best how to organize, deliver, and finance their health systems. But this is about a methodology. This is about a way to support the health authorities and the payers in making their evidence-based decisions. So at the EU level, for the first time, we are going to try to create a system of joint clinical assessments. And this graph shows you what we will do and what we won't do. So the clinical domains are looking at the problem and the use of the current technologies, describing the technology which will be assessed, looking at the relative clinical effectiveness compared to another technology, and the relative safety. What we will not be looking at, and this is very much where the member states and their own countries look at, are the economic evaluation, the ethical aspects, organizational aspects, again, because every country organizes their health systems the way, what they see fit, social aspects and legal aspects. Next slide, please. So the joint clinical assessment, this new form of EU cooperation under health technology assessment, has not started from scratch. There's been a long, very well developed methodology and work at a voluntary level through different projects that have been funded by the health program and now the EU for Health program. So to mention just a few of the work streams, you'll see here some reports, but basically it was a group of member states who came together with funding from the European Commission to look at how to work at this, how to do something together, how to bring all of their expertise so that we could try to come towards a single EU joint clinical assessment. And so where we are today is very much thanks to the voluntary work of some key member states, key experts, and we are building on that process. Next slide, please. So this is what the HTA regulation is really has come out of this very close collaboration with the member states. So in a nutshell, the regulation proposes to do joint work on common scientific and clinical aspects of health technology assessment. It's a member state driven work. So we have the governance structure is chaired by member states. The aim is to ensure high quality, timeliness and transparency. So these joint clinical assessments will be really the state of the art. They will happen quickly and they will be available and published for all to see. And it's very important as well that all of this work that's being done will then also be used in the member states. This is again this part of being timely and making and finding this kind of economy of scale, helping everyone involved in health technology assessment. So the member states, again, as I showed you earlier on, the member states they have their responsibilities of drawing the conclusions on actually how to use these joint clinical assessments, and they will make the decisions regarding pricing and reimbursement. But the added value of this regulation is that we will do a report, this joint clinical assessment, this report on a product, which can then be used by all countries. At the moment, it's a fragmented system. Every country has their own way of doing health technology assessments. So both from the developer's perspective, they're expected to give different informations to different organizations, and as well for the stakeholders, the patients organizations, the professionals. It's very difficult to kind of navigate what is needed or where the reports are in different countries. And here is the key and why we're very happy to be invited to this meeting and to have a discussion with you. The engagement of stakeholders is key in this work. As I said, HTA is not very well understood by many different organizations. So part of our work in bringing this at the EU level is also to engage with patients organizations, professional associations, other stakeholders. It's really important that we see that we're doing this for everyone to benefit. And then there's also, because this is quite, as I said, this is the first system of its kind that's being done at a kind of regional level, bringing in all member states, there will be a progressive implementation. Next slide, please. So as we said, that the progressive implementation means that we cannot start immediately with all medicines. So the co-legislators decided on this progressive implementation, and the first medicines to go through this joint clinical assessment will be new cancer medicines and advanced therapeutic medicinal products, and those will be the ones for the first 3 years. The regulation is applicable from January 2025. So from January 2025, any new cancer medicine which goes for market authorization will also have a joint clinical assessment. And then following 2 years after this, the 3-year cancer and advanced therapeutic, we will introduce also orphan medicines. And then 5 years after that, it will be all medicines. So it's a huge amount of work, but we think that the best way is to start progressively. And we will also introduce the clinical assessment on high-risk medical devices and in vitro medical devices. Part of this joint clinical assessment, that's not the only work that will be done. We will also look at joint scientific consultations. This will be done in parallel with the European medicines agencies. We are still developing the systems in place to do that. We will also look at emerging health technologies. It's very important that we keep up to date with what's coming. We know that there's at the moment a huge innovation in medicine, and I should say that we need to be also aware of what is coming up in the pipeline. So that's why we will also be looking at emerging health technologies. And most important of all, we still need to develop these methodologies for joint working. So the work that I mentioned earlier from the UNETA projects, we will be building on those, but those projects were very much looking at the voluntary work. Now, the key now is moving from that methodology that was done in these voluntary setting to making sure that it's aligned with the EU legislative framework and this regulation. Next slide, please. So this is a kind of a bit of a busy slide, but it gives you a kind of, it gives you a little bit of a snapshot of the governance structure and how we're planning to work. So basically the overarching governance of this regulation, the implementation, is the HTA coordination group. This coordination group has all member states as members, and there's a chair. Currently the elected chair is Ireland, and there are two co-chairs, Italy and Sweden. And this coordination group will also sit in the medicinal products configuration and medical devices configuration, because here we think it's very important to also be very clear that obviously the specificities for doing joint clinical assessment for medicinal products is very, very different to that of medical devices. Within this HTA coordination group, there will be 4 subgroups. So one subgroup on the joint clinical assessments, which I was explaining about, one on the joint scientific consultations, one on emerging health technologies, and one on methodology. And each of these subgroups will have membership of all 27 member states and observer countries such as Norway and Iceland. The secretariat for this whole complicated governance structure is based in my unit in the European Commission in DG SANTE. And the secretariat will provide administrative and technical support and IT support. So we are also in tandem creating an IT platform, the HTA IT platform, where all different actors, all the different groups that are responsible, all the different groups that have a role to play in this new system will have access to. There will also be a platform, there'll also be access to the general public. So there'll be lots of different kind of pages and different firewalls. Security is key here because you can imagine there will be some confidential business data. So we are working very, very hard to make sure that this platform has a lot of security elements in it. And the idea then is that, as I said, that different actors, depending on their relations with this, will be able to access it. A very important part of the whole governance structure is the stakeholder network. We launched a call for applications for the stakeholder network. The call closed 2 weeks ago, I think, and we are currently assessing the different applications that we received. We received 74 applications, and so we are currently looking at the eligibility criteria and also looking at the quality of the motivation letters and the level of expertise available. So we're very excited about that. I think the number shows you the interest around this very innovative and ambitious project that we're doing. Next slide, please. So to give you a little bit of a timeline, I explained already that this is a progressive implementation, but from where we are now to January 2025, we have a lot of work to do. So we've already set up the HTA coordination group. We're in the process of setting up the subgroups. We also are setting up the stakeholder network, that I just explained, and we also have to draft some implementing acts, which is like secondary legislation, which will look more in detail about the different roles that the different groups will play and how the actual joint clinical assessments will be done. So we are currently in this this implementation phase where we're also setting up these different subgroups. So we're waiting to get the nominations now from the different member states for these subgroups. And then we will also, as I said, we will also have a meeting of the stakeholder network. We hope to have the first meeting in the towards the summer period. Basically, it's really like, as I say to my colleagues, we're kind of building a house, and we're starting to, see the different rooms. The foundations have been laid by the UNETA, this past voluntary work that I alluded to. The framework, as I said, the foundation has been laid by this, but now it's really the fact that we are putting this together with 27 member states with a strong, what we hope to be a strong, vocal and active stakeholder network as well. Next slide, please. So basically, this gave you a little bit of the kind of construction of how we're starting to implement the regulation. A few key messages I wanted to leave you with. As I said, this is really a new system, the first of its kind. It's very important right from the beginning that we are inclusive and transparent in our work, and that's why it's very important for us to engage with organizations such as yourselves, because as we said, we need to hear your feedback. This has to be useful for you. You have to see merit in what we're doing, because we're doing this because we really believe that this is an important work that can really assist the effectiveness and accessibility and resilience of health systems. Next, you just point then. And we also look for the commitment of all stakeholders to ensure that this is a smooth implementation. I think it's a hugely ambitious project, but I think it's one that really shows you where we can find EU added value in health systems. So we have less than 2 years left until this comes into application. But as you can see, we're working very hard to get this in motion. And I'm very interested to hear how your panel will discuss, where they see their role, where they see the need, where the bottlenecks are, where the challenges, but also the opportunities. And I would really encourage you and your membership to engage in this and to be involved in developing this new system. Thank you very much.